Hello, and welcome to the Mac Gamecast, episode 54. I'm your host, Jon Carr, as always, and with me is my co-host, Casper. How you doing, sir?
Doing really good. Really cool announcements from Apple over the last while. It's been a while since the actual announcement happened, but now we're here to talk about it. And since then, people have gotten their hands on everything that's been announced. So we also have some numbers to talk about for everything and stuff. So lots of exciting stuff to go over. And
It is. I haven't been this excited in a while myself. I wanted to do a bit where I go like, "Good morning, Night City," because Cyberpunk has a Mac port coming, and he launches into this whole intro, but I've heard it 100 times, so I could probably ad-lib it pretty good. You're just missing the cyber music to go along with it. But we got M4 Max, we got Cyberpunk port, also now Resident Evil 2 port, Apple Intelligence, and maybe some other fun tidbits. So you've been doing some more research and numbers on it. So what do you want to start with?
I mean, I think it makes sense to go through things sort of the chronological order of how Apple announced them. So they did like 3-day events where I don't even know if we can call them events because there's sort of this middle ground between an event and a press briefing. Nothing was really announced in advance, but they did release these short little videos that were like, 15 minutes or something, 10 to 15 minutes each. Sort of in the style of an event, but not really. In any case, first one they announced a new iMac. It's nothing that spectacular. That is, it's pretty much what you would expect. Spec bumped iMac, going from the M3 iMac to now M4.
Right.
It's just, the baseline M4 chips. You have the cut down M4 with 8 CPU cores and 8 GPU cores, and you can upgrade to the full 10 plus 10 core M4. The other major thing here is now, before on the older generations there were limited color options. If you went with the base model, you could only get the full range of colors if you upgraded to one of the higher end configs.
That's weird.
it was silly, but
that is
I mean it does optimize production operation cost and such, but still it's just color. Now you can get all colors and all models, so that's for people who want a specific color and only need the base model, that's fantastic. But this is the first Mac with the M4 chip, previously seen in the iPad. And nothing much other than that really happened. Like, there were some small changes, like the camera got a slight bump and stuff, but that's basically it. Now, we've many times on the show before talked about like the baseline for Mac gaming, especially because the MacBook Air is such a popular device in the Mac lineup and represents probably the majority of Macs out there. For gaming to be worthwhile for developers to think about, there needs to be a sizable enough market that can feasibly run the games. Not just a sizable Mac market, but a sizable enough market where the games can feasibly run well enough.
Right, definitely.
And on that front, like we now have a Mac with a baseline M4 chip, even a cut down 8 plus 8. And from the initial testing I've seen, it runs, if you are very serious about games, you're not going to go out and get the base M4 Mac Mini.
Yeah.
Realistically, if you're serious about games and it's the only thing you care about, you're not going to get any of the Macs for it. But if you're getting a Mac, you want a Mac for whatever reason, other things, you just like having a Mac. Like, we prefer the Mac as a computing platform. You also want to play games on it. If the base model is all you really need for your other stuff and you just also want to play some games on it, this is now fairly competent at that.
Yeah.
From what I've seen so far, it's looking like you can get pretty much anything to run at 1080p medium, 30 FPS or more, but that's like minimum you can expect, it seems. And that's if you're very serious about it, it's not fantastic. You want to get to 60 FPS or crank the settings higher or something, but if it's a machine you have for other things, that's a very decent experience that you can get away with, right?
Yeah. Also, the base price point is pretty attractive for the Mini,
especially
in
when
my
you consider
opinion.
that you get like a 4.5K screen with it and stuff. That's yeah.
Sorry, the
pretty
Mini.
good.
I meant the iMac.
Yeah.
But yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I think these days it's worth pointing out for whoever out there. Obviously, it depends on the game you're playing, but a lot of games these days honestly look quite good on medium. It's true on low, like your eyes are like, I don't really know what I'm looking at. But a lot of games on medium look pretty dang good these days.
Definitely.
Whether it's the Cyberpunks or the Resident Evils or whatever, like
Mhm.
I mean, if you're a real like graphics person, you will notice differences between high and typically like high to ultras is the lowest level of like difference. But like low to medium is definitely a jump. Medium to high is a jump, but not as big. High to like ultra or extreme is usually like really minor stuff overall.
Mhm.
And then it's like, oh well, is there ray tracing or not to slap on top of that? That again is noticeable, but yeah.
Yeah,
It's
but
true.
we are far from those days where you put it on medium and half of the objects didn't have shadows.
Correct, or more. Yeah, correct, Mundo. So that's what it reminded me of. Yeah, playing games when I was younger, when that was exactly the case. You know, you get a new computer and jump from like medium to high. You're like, oh my god, it's like a whole new game.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's not really the case anymore. So,
but I'll also point out that when I say that these numbers are looking to be around the 30 FPS mark on medium 1080p. A lot of the games I've seen data for here are through crossover. That includes like Cyberpunk running through crossover and direct 3D metal, the game porting toolkit thing.
right.
So native games are going to run even better. Like the data I saw for Death Stranding native game, well, that was 1080p medium 60 FPS. And it did have some drops down to like 57 FPS and stuff. But,
sure, yeah.
That's pretty good. For an entry-level computer, this is the lowest end M4 computer you can get from Apple. Well, from anywhere, because it's only Apple who makes it, right? But yeah. And this is what we're going to see in the entry-level MacBook Air as well. It might run a little bit slower in the MacBook Air because the M4 iMac does have a fan in there. But
right.
What I've heard is that the fan doesn't really run to an audible degree. It's a tiny fan. It's probably going to run a little slow on the MacBook Air, but I don't think it's going to be a huge difference, honestly.
Right. Agreed.
Yeah.
Yeah, the numbers are definitely impressive and promising, and I really think we're reaching a really nice saturation point of not just silicon, but upgraded silicon models, the M2s, the M3s. I don't know the statistics, like, is M1 still the most widespread because it was the first, or have a lot of people upgraded? Like, a lot of dedicated Apple fans, at least on the phone side, like, they like to upgrade their stuff. My personal motto used to be like every 3 years I'd upgrade my computer, but I'd also buy a higher end one to start with. So it lasts like the level of performance was more steady throughout those 3 years for gaming and such.
I mean, without going into specifics, I can say that data from work where I make iOS apps, I can say that the level, like the quantity of people who are on older iPads is like huge compared to the amount of people who are on older iPhones. And if we extend that to the Mac, I think it's people are gonna be on older machines a lot longer than they are with something like phones.
It's true. They definitely do. Yeah.
So yeah, like it's not unreasonable to see 20% of people on 6-year-old iPads in the data I have. Like yeah.
No, that tracks. My sister, my mother. Like, in fact, as a present, I bought them new iPads one year, like relatively recently, because I'm like, your iPads are so old. What are you doing? Like, here's a new one. It was like hurting me, even though I wasn't using it. I'm like, I can't take it.
Yeah,
have a better screen, have some better features, But it's
I personally do think that the majority of people who are on Macs are still on that first generation Apple Silicon, and I don't necessarily think the M4 is going to change much about that. But we're getting more people off of Intel and onto Apple Silicon all the time.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and also when we look at the marketing Apple does at these little mini events they did, they always compared the new M4 generation to that M1. which suggests who they think should be upgrading to it, right?
Right.
Obviously, they'd love if you bought a new Mac every year as well, but the marketing suggests, hey, if you're on an M1, this is a good upgrade time. But they also compare it to the last generation of Intel machines, and if you're still on Intel, it's a huge jump, right? So, they didn't market that much to the people who are on later generations, really. A little true. About M2, but not that much.
I'm personally really impressed by the new Mac Minis.
Yes, and that would be like day 2 of these events, so I think we can open that box now.
Right, yeah.
You want to say a bit about
that? Yeah, so as far as I know, they've redesigned the form factor to be quite a bit smaller. I saw some side-by-side comparisons on YouTube, and I'm like, whoa, this thing is way small now. Like,
yeah, it's 5 by 5 inches, and then some height that I'm not entirely sure on, but 5 by 5 inches.
Yeah, that's like the height is like what I'm looking at a photo. It's probably like 3 to 4 or something. Maybe I think 3-ish.
I was thinking even less than that, honestly.
Less than 3. I think 3 at the most. But yeah, really compact little box. M4 chip across the line, so there's no. I don't think there's an M4 Max or Ultra yet.
The Max exists in the MacBook Pros.
In the MacBook Pros, yeah. So here you have the M4 or the M4 Pro. So the base 3 models just have the M4. You're basically upgrading your storage or your RAM. In the first three options, they have the same 10-core CPU, 10-core GPU. And then there is a higher end M4 Pro model, 24 gigs of unified memory, 512 storage. But I like the pricing on these quite a lot.
They are very attractive. Like
very attractive.
It's wild that we've reached a point now where I would almost say one of the best value pre-built PCs you can find across any manufacturer is an Apple computer.
I agree.
That's not something you've been able to say for a while.
No, I saw people on like PC Gamer like gushing and writing articles about this. Like, dang, I wish this was like a little PC gaming machine or something. This thing's amazing. Like, people are not losing their minds, too strong a word, but like people are very impressed, and I'm very impressed as an Apple fan. I was like, if I didn't particularly need a laptop for certain points throughout the year when I travel, like I would sell this right now and just get a Mini, plug it into my monitor, boom, done. Like, I love it. It has a pretty decent amount of ports, honestly. I think 2 in the front and 3 or 4 in the back.
Yeah, so it's 2 USB-C in the front.
Yeah.
3 Thunderbolt in the back.
Right.
HDMI, Ethernet. There's an audio jack, and I forgot if there's anything more on the back.
No, that's it. I pulled it up here. Yeah, the front has the headphone jack. The back is the 3 ports, HDMI port and the Ethernet port. It's worth noting the Pro M4 Pro version has Thunderbolt 5 ports. But only that one. So for some reason you need Thunderbolt 5, you got to go for the Pro on this one.
Thunderbolt 5 has insane bandwidth. It's 80 gigabits per second, which is that's wild. So if you need to create like a little cluster of machines, like combining all of them with Thunderbolt bridges between them, that's a powerful little farm of computers.
It is. Yeah, not too shabby. It's $599 USD for the base model. I mean, you could go Apple Education and get a little discount or whatever, but
yeah, it's $100 off on discount pricing. So
or all the way up to the M4 Pro version is $1,400 basically. I didn't actually check these out, what they even offer for upgrades. Looking now, so you can upgrade the processor and the memory, or the storage as usual, or the same 10 gigabit Ethernet thing, which I don't know who does that, but some people do, I'm sure.
I mean, the Mac Minis are very popular in data centers as well, where I can definitely see that 10 gigabit Ethernet being quite meaningful.
For 8 terabytes of SSD storage, it's only plus $2,500. Bargain. Anyway, I'm not here to mock it. You can upgrade the M4 Pro chip for $200 on the Mac Mini. Maybe this is across the board on all of them, but what is it? It goes up to 2 more CPU cores and 4 more GPU cores. So it jumps from 12 to 14 and then 16 to 20 on the GPU.
Yep.
Not a bad little upgrade if you really want to pimp the machine right now. And of course, all these, were advertised as Apple Intelligence, which we'll talk about more in a later segment. But they all have that's everywhere on all the new machines, the little Apple Intelligence.
Mm-hmm. And on the CPU note, like something that's quite interesting to me is that there's like no pattern in how Apple does the Pro series of chips. Like the other chips, you can sort of see like, okay, so they like to be on 8 cores for the base model, and okay, maybe they jump up to 10, but it's around there, and the Max chip. But the Pro series is all over the place. It's like in the original generation, it was at parity with the Max chip, so the CPU side was the same, and you only got more GPU.
Yeah.
Then at some point they went to like a 6+6 configuration where it was 12 cores but spread across 6 P cores and 6 E cores. And now we're back up to this like almost parity with the Max chip, but not quite, where it's an incredible CPU again. So yeah, we're up to 10 performance cores and 4 efficiency cores. So if you only need CPU performance, while you do get more on the Max, it's not worth the jump. The Pro is incredible as it is.
Yeah.
But like there's just no pattern in what Apple is doing with the Pro chip. That's also why the Pro, the M4 Pro is probably the best value increase over the prior generation Pro because of this, because you get so many more cores, and they haven't really hiked the price generation on generation for the same kinds of machines.
Correct.
So yeah,
I was staring at the page. Like, you just go to buy. I'm like, wait a minute. Like, why would I get a Max unless I really need these extra GPU cores? It jumps from 20 to 32. Otherwise, it's
like the full fat Max, you do get up to 40 GPU cores. So it is still a doubling of GPU performance, roughly, assuming linear scaling, right?
Right. Yeah.
So if you really need GPU performance, that the full Max chip does give you nearly double the performance of the M4 Pro.
Yeah, it's pretty bonkers. But it's also
on the CPU side, you get like, I don't know, 20% more.
Correct.
So, and that's going from the full one to the full one. The cut down Max is the exact same CPU as the full Pro.
Yeah, exactly. It just ups the GPU cores as far as I can tell.
Yeah.
And that runs you an extra, $600 for that. Yeah.
That might even have hidden cost in it, because I think it also forces you to get a memory upgrade if you do it.
Funny enough, no. So
okay, it doesn't do that on that one.
If you go for the upgraded M4 Pro, it has 48 gigs of memory. Mm-hmm. But then if you jump to the Max, it drops down to 36 gigs of memory, but it has the 32-core GPU as opposed to the 20-core GPU. So you actually lose RAM, but you go up in GPU. And you go up in storage as well.
Then it's if you upgrade to the full M4 Max, it forces another RAM upgrade.
Up to 48, correct. Same as the upgraded M4 Pro in that sense.
Right.
It's the jumps are a little weird. I agree on these 4 models. They used to have it more clear cut, where like you go here, it's all upgraded usually across the board. You go here, it's even more upgraded. Or some of them are maybe the same, but this is a weird jump where it kind of goes. It does this kind of wavy thing depending on what stats you're looking at. But I like what you said earlier, that you're not getting a price increase for this. The M4 Pro is still, I guess, maybe, I can't remember if the M1 Pros were $2,500 as well, or maybe they were $2,400, but it's very similar at $2,499 USD base price, no discounts, conversions, whatever. I think they're. I mean, I don't need to upgrade, but I'm tempted to. And I think I said on the podcast before, my upgrade point, I was like, I'm just waiting for an M4. I don't know why, but it just felt, it like made me happy. Like, I like even numbers, I guess, if possible. Yeah.
But yeah, it's a lot of huge upgrades here. One other thing that is sort of like hidden in all of this is that when you do upgrade the CPU from base to Pro to Max, and not in between necessarily, you do get more memory bandwidth as well, which is like a hidden upgrade. So even if you have as like with the high-end M4 Pro and the low-end M4 Max, the exact same CPU, it might still perform a slight bit better, but it's super minor, like single-digit percentage points here.
Right.
But that is a factor.
Makes sense.
But yeah, on the gaming front, when Apple announced these computers, like every single day of the events, all 3 on the iMac, the Mac Mini, and the one we're going to cover next, the MacBook Pros, for all of them, they mentioned gaming at some point. They had a little section where they said, and for gamers, the new computers are fantastic because of this.
Right.
With the iMac, it was pretty simple. They just went, with the iMac, you can enjoy Civilization 6 better than ever. That's or 7, whichever one is the new one. 7, right?
7's the new one, yeah.
Yeah.
Coming, still not out, yeah.
Yeah, so they showed a little bit of Civilization 7 on the computer, like a very little bit. It was seconds of clips, right? Which is also a turn-based game, which is pretty ideal for computers that might not keep the frame rate, at 60 all the time or something, because it doesn't matter if it drops a little, yeah. So for that, you could probably maybe even like Metal FX upscale it to 4.5K native resolution and just, internal render resolution a lot lower, 1080p-ish or something, but enjoy it fine that way.
Right.
For the Mac Mini, I'm actually kind of blanking on what game they showed on it, but they did show some game. Oh, that was Control.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so for the Mac Mini, they showed off Control and actually kind of emphasized ray tracing. Because they were talking about it in relation to how ray tracing was twice as fast as on M3 on the M4 generation.
Yeah.
And the benchmarks I've seen so far do seem to indicate that that's either accurate or perhaps even a slight understatement.
Interesting.
That's generally the tendency I'm seeing out there, that the numbers Apple gave are either entirely on point or a little below what the actual results are.
Yeah, which is nice, because you would expect the average tech company, or even honestly Apple in the past, to slightly over-exaggerate, like, oh, these peak numbers are the standard all the time. And it's like, well, actually, no. But I agree. I've read some articles and checked out some things where people are like, oh, this is actually exceeding what Apple has said, and like reasonably often, rather than like in some rare case. So that's been cool. Quick aside on Control, having played it, I can see why. Great game, by the way. I highly recommend it. We could probably review it when it comes out, for all the Remedy fans out there. Sorry, what am I saying? Ray tracing, really good in the game, and used like pretty much constantly. To not spoil some things, some areas no, but for a large portion of the game, ray tracing actually is like, oh, it's on my screen. I can see what it's doing. So I can see why they use that as an example. So makes sense.
Definitely. Now, one note I'll also just put out there is that even though 2x performance on ray tracing is accurate, doesn't mean that you can expect 2x performance in the actual frame rate when you're using ray tracing, because obviously it's also rendering all of the other stuff.
Yeah.
And the GPU performance increase from M3 to M4 in general purpose graphics, not ray tracing specifically, isn't anywhere near as impressive. It's still better. It's still noticeably better, more so than Apple indicated. Apple was estimated getting it anywhere from 15 to 20%, depending on the exact comparison they were doing. It seems like we're more often seeing in the neighborhood of 25%. But it's still a lot less than the 2x of the pure ray tracing performance.
Yeah.
And that's, on the same core count configurations where...
Of course.
Yeah.
That is easy to confuse or conflate, so I'm glad you brought that up. And, it'd be nice if Apple pointed that out, but, companies don't do these kind of things. They just show the flashy numbers. But, once again, it's not always as simple as, oh, new hardware, of course it's better, because gaming is its own particular thing. And,
very much so. In fact, very recently, Intel announced horrible naming, but the Core Ultra Series 200, or Series 2, one of the two, line of CPUs. And most of the CPUs they released in that generation are, for gaming, worse than the prior generation of CPU. They perform better in other tasks, but they perform worse in gaming.
Right, yeah.
So, definitely.
Exactly. But the Apple stuff's looking good, for sure.
And in a mixed, mixed rendering situation, Cyberpunk with ray tracing turned on, and this was both tested with ray tracing on medium and high and full path tracing and all, and it's roughly the same for all of them. We're looking at a 65% overall performance increase over the same chip style of M3, so comparing pro to pro or max to max,
Right.
with the same core count. So not actually like pro to pro on the CPU front, but GPU core count, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a mixture of the 2x performance increase on ray tracing and the general purpose increase. We land on that roughly 65% improvement.
And that's again through crossover preview or the
yes, that's
game
through
porting toolkit.
That's through crossover and game porting toolkit. So that's not native port at all. But that is one of the huge things that came out of the third event when Apple announced the MacBook Pros and they talked about gaming there. Cyberpunk coming to Mac. Everyone listening to this may already know this because it's such a huge headline that's floating around everywhere in the Mac gaming ecosystem, right? But
yeah, but it's really exciting.
It is overall super exciting.
I think I've been hammering on that or yammering on about that for years. Like we need a big centerpiece is the wrong word, but yeah, essentially headline grabbing title. No one's running around like the next. Okay, Resident Evil's cool as a series, but they've already been pumping them out, or XYZ indie game or whatever. Like
yeah.
Cyberpunk is like one of the juggernauts in the industry. CD Projekt Red is obvious. Anything they release is basically like whoa, but Cyberpunk sold like 30 million copies and yada yada yada. So it is just a quick rundown on that. It is the Ultimate Edition coming to Mac. No release date other than early next year. Silicon only, no Intel. The Ultimate Edition includes the base game and the Cyberpunk Liberty, Phantom Liberty expansion, which is incredible, so that's good. And it will I'm happy to read it will launch on the Mac App Store, GOG, Steam, and the Epic Game Store. So basically all the platforms, no restriction, which is nice. And it'll have path tracing, frame generation, and built-in spatial audio, which is interesting because last I checked, that last feature was a paid add-on for PC.
Oh.
They had some sort of, unless I'm mixing it up with something else, but they had some sort of like $10 super fancy audio upgrade thing there that was like just this year.
Honestly, so that feels like a very weird thing for them to charge for, but okay.
Unless let me check and
I've not looked into it or heard about it, so it might still be perfectly accurate. I just find it a bit strange that they would charge for that, but yeah.
Remember looking at it. Well, they called it personalized spatial audio, but yeah, last I looked, you had to pay for it.
Okay.
Rather than it just being in the game, but maybe that was only on PC, or maybe you had to pay for some Windows component to add it. I remember looking at it because I was still playing the game at the time on my PC Tower, which I've now sold, by the way. I'm officially not a PC heretic anymore, unless I use GeForce Now, but that's on a Mac. Yeah. But I am very curious because this game does look very good. Even on medium, it looks good. But on high to ultra, it's like, even though the game's from late 2020, I think November 2020 was its original release date, it still looks like a game that just got released.
They have also upgraded the graphics throughout some of the game updates.
You're not wrong. They have. There are some areas where there's definitely like some rough corners. If you go, stare at some poster on the wall or NPC's nose or something, you'll start to see some of the cracks. But broadly speaking, the game's super gorgeous. So the numbers are really good through crossover, preview, and game boarding toolkit. So I am very curious. It appears, as far as we know, CD Projekt Red is doing the port themselves. The only game port they did themselves previously was The Witcher 1, and that was through Wine. And it was pretty bad. So, and that was like a random release on Steam several years ago. By bad, I mean like it was just crashing and not really working. They fixed it up. But so I have higher hopes for them. Or I'm wondering if they will originally, Larian's team, Alvarez, their little Mac squad, had wanted to port Cyberpunk to Mac. They even approached Apple and asked them for like funding. This was like this was like near its launch, whereas the disasters, of course, everyone said no. Its reputation was down. Now everyone's hailing it as like, outside of like No Man's Sky, it's like the best game redemptive arc of all time, basically. Which is sort of true, more or less. But honestly, the Cyberpunk 2077 Edgerunners anime had a lot to do with it. It generated like so much hype back into the game. It gave them a huge boost. So it's also nice that this is retroactively giving us the stamp of approval on our Edge Runners review, because now the game is coming to Mac and we can say we're reviewing a show based on a Mac game. I like that. That was fun. Was there anything else in the announcement? It just says more details, including a release date for early next year, will be revealed at a later time, so make sure to stay tuned. So,
but from a technical perspective, I find it interesting that it's going to include frame generation, because all of the other stuff exists in Metal. So you have Metal FX upscaling for upscaling for the spatial audio thing. Apple has a thing called Phase. They do personalized spatial audio on the AirPods and stuff as well at a system level, integrated with Apple Music, all that jazz. Frame generation doesn't currently exist in Metal. Obviously, people could go out there and write a bespoke shader for it, but that's generally not how that flows. That would be a large investment on a single game studio with no real reason behind it. But it's possible that they're going to use AMD's FSR, because that's already compatible with macOS and will just work on any GPU, including Apple Silicon. But then Apple is touting a game that is, not based on their own Metal FX technology, but instead AMD's FSR technology stack. And that doesn't feel like what Apple would put their money behind when it comes to native ports. But then again, it's also cooperative, and it's not them making the game, so I don't know.
Right. Yeah.
For now, it seems most likely that it's FSR, and then FSR is also going to be the upscaler used, which also makes sense given that it's already on the PC port. They've already done the implementation of FSR. Obviously, they might have to tweak a little to get it to run on macOS, but still not making it Metal from the scratch.
Right.
But I don't know. Maybe Apple is just going to come out with Cyberpunk and go, oh, by the way, Metal FX frame generation is now a thing too. And okay. But yeah.
Yeah. The game, in my opinion, does need it. I was running it on a pretty good PC, but on like absolute crank settings, everything to the max in ultra wide 4K. And I think my average was, 50, 60 FPS, but not steady. And it would dip to like 45, and I didn't really care. It's a single player game. It's not multiplayer. And I preferred, the ludicrous, visuals into my eyeballs rather than like the perfect frame rate. But that also was using DLSS on, I think, auto rather. I wasn't using a performance or whatever. If I used performance, it would jump up. It would spike to like 80 to 100. So frame generation can definitely get like without DLSS on, aka frame generation basically, or equivalent. I think my FPS was like 30 or something. It basically almost doubled it, but still looking pretty much as good. Interesting. Even CD Projekt Red themselves, or Nvidia, because I work closely with them, most of their showing it off. Like a lot of the DLSS tech, or DLSS 3, the newer tech, which you need a 40X series GPU or a 3090 on the PC side. It's always like Cyberpunk's poster child. Like here's the cool increases in frame rate or in frame generation and stuff. So yeah, good game for it as well. Kind of like how Control's a good game for ray tracing. I mean, I think Cyberpunk's a good game for ray tracing, but not as obviously. My buddy got a new laptop, Windows, that had a 4070 in it, and he could turn on ray tracing, and because he hadn't played with it before. So I was sitting with him, and I'm like, okay, turn ray tracing on. And he's like, okay, I did. Now what? And I did like, no, well, go look at a puddle or whatever, and like, he's like, oh, so that's what it is. That's cool,
So my frame rate went through the floor. It's now at 2 FPS. Oh, but that puddle is shiny.
Yes, correct. Yeah. So, I am very curious how well optimized it will be. It's looking good because even just in the crossover and so on tests, it's looking great, or what I would call great for a Mac. Of course, they just say it's available on Silicon. So now, of course, we have M1 to M4, and then of course we have your base models and your Pros and your Maxes and your Ultras and whatever. So clearly a range. I am very curious to see how well it performs. I don't think, even though I agree that the adoption rate of newer silicon chips is obviously slower, and M1's more the baseline. I am curious, how well it runs on an M1, but that's not really fair to use what's now almost, actually, I think it is a 4-year-old chip, because it was November, I think, 2020 when it, approximately when they released, or at least announced anyway. We should probably be using an M2 or M3 or even M4 as more of a, like, okay, can it run on X recent machine? Or how well, but maybe I'd be surprised and it runs reasonably well on even an M1 or at least an M1 Pro or something like that.
I mean, a higher end M1 series computer like an M1 Max is going to do it just fine.
Oh yeah.
M1 Pro, I can see you getting away with a decent enough experience. M1 base, especially in like the fanless MacBook Air, 8 gigabytes of RAM config, all that. Maybe 720p all low can run at 30-ish FPS. But I wouldn't expect more than that.
No, and it's not fair as a gamer to expect your 4-year-old machine, even though the game's 4 years old. As we pointed out, it's been really updated, and even when it was released, it had pretty high system requirements at the time. Not like crisis level melt your computer, but if you went all the way up, you could kind of get there. So,
and we are talking about a fanless thin and light laptop, not adjust expectations, but it's looking really good. And what I also like is, as far as I can, at least according to, again, the pattern of Apple releases, a lot of what would appear to be Apple's quote unquote sponsored games really only come to the Mac App Store. That's not, I think, true across the board, but as far as we could tell, a lot of them were like exclusive to the App Store. And this is everywhere. It's on GOG, which is CD Projekt Red's, like, I don't want to it's their company. They run it, the DRM free store. And it's on the I was going to say on the Epic. It's on Epic. It's on Steam. So it's basically everywhere, which is nice. And I believe we had talked about this a little last time off air. If you already own it on Steam for any other reason, you'll just get the Mac version, and your saves should work, because if you put them in the cloud anyway, they'll work. Steam Cloud or whatever it's called. Epic, I think Epic has a similar Steam Cloud thingamajig, but they don't call it Steam. They call it Game Cloud or Save Sync, or they call it something. They have some name, because I used it on Borderlands 3 and it worked, because I played Borderlands 3 on Windows at the Game Store first, and then later in Boot Camp back when I had an Intel Mac. Then when the Mac version came out, I switched and my saves just downloaded and worked fine. So nice.
That should work. But yeah, super hyped for that. All things Cyberpunk. I mean, they've already confirmed they're also, obviously the new Cyberpunk game is confirmed in the works, Project Orion. There's another Cyberpunk anime supposed to be in the works as well, unknown theme or name or anything. But yeah, a lot of cool Cyberpunk media for all the fans out there, which I'm a big one. So really happy this is coming. Just got to add to that library, man. Just keep adding the Mac to the Mac game library.
Yeah, and as mentioned, this was announced together with the M4 series of MacBook Pros, which go up to the M4 Max. Basically the same configuration as M3 Max, up to 16 CPU cores, 40 GPU cores, all the jazz, Thunderbolt 5, that sort of thing. What you would expect from it, basically. Upgraded camera, just like on the iMac, with center stage and 12 megapixels, and basically an iPhone camera in a way put in there. I've seen some stuff about the display that I find curious, because Apple didn't mention display improvements at all. But the display is apparently now using quantum dot technology, which I've complained a little bit at you on our chats beforehand, that Sony and Samsung especially like to market their TVs as QLED, which on a big box where you can barely see the little tick at the bottom of the Q makes it seem like it says OLED. And I think it's a bit misleading, but quantum dot itself is an improvement over what Apple was doing before, which was basically like a red phosphor film to boost the color gamut, because the LEDs struggle with producing red colors more so than green and blue. So by just tinting everything a bit redder, and then in the actual panel increasing red and green so that white is still white, but the film helps with producing the reds, you get a wider color gamut. Quantum dot is replacing that. It should, in theory, produce better pixel response times, so more let's say, fluid motion. Like obviously the display panel updates at that ProMotion 120 hertz, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the pixels themselves are capable of changing from one color to another within one update cycle. If the colors are far apart, especially, if you want it to go from entirely white to entirely black, that one actually can be pretty fast because the display LED just turns off on that bit. But like gray to gray, then, right? Some variation of gray to gray can take a more than one update cycle, maybe 2, maybe 3, maybe 4, whatever. And this in theory should be faster at that. But Notebook Check did a review of it where they actually found it to be slower than the older panels they tested. But I suspect that's just panel to panel variation, and since Apple didn't really mention it, the average display panel on the M4 generation might be a bit faster in response time, but there's still a wide enough variation that you can't expect anything necessarily, and it's just a very minor improvement, but it is there.
Right.
But that's basically the M4 series of MacBook Pros. Nothing, too unexpected there, but a nice performance upgrade on the chips and stuff.
Definitely. Yeah. Yeah, nothing earth-shattering, but very solid. Like, doesn't feel like worthless is too strong a word, but like, it doesn't feel disappointing. Like, there's been times I can't think of the exact one, but Intel's in the past where the upgrade's been really minor, or like you're still paying full price what seemed like not much of a jump. They've certainly been guilty of that on the iPhones. It's in the older ones, but yeah, the silicon progression is very solid. And occasionally spectacular, but overall, like in certain areas, not like every single thing. But yeah, very solid, very reliable, and with Apple's increasing game focus, not just game library additions, but what appears to be features or developers taking advantage of features one way or the other. Like the frame generation for Cyberpunk, very interested, or more ray tracing coming and stuff like that. So, yeah, just really good stuff. There is another game announcement that just dropped the other day. Somewhat unsurprisingly, the Resident Evil spree continues.
Yes.
And we're now on the Resident Evil 2 remake, not to be confused with Resident Evil 2 released in like 20, 30 years ago or whatever the heck, maybe longer. I remember watching a friend play it on like a PlayStation 2 or 1 or whatever the heck way back. So, it said it's coming December 10th, not just for Mac, but the usual iOS, iPhone, I think 15 or later or something, and iPads and so on. Funny enough, it said December 10th, but then when you go to the App Store, it says expected December 30th. And the announcement says it has save crossplay between all Apple devices. But then you go to the App Store page and it specifically says saved data cannot be uploaded and downloaded between macOS and iOS devices. So there's some conflicting information on the saves and the release date here. I'm not sure what's true, but what's true is it is coming soon, in December. And Resident Evil 2 Remake, it got a lot of good reviews and buzz on the PC side. I think RE2 is like a fan favorite overall, from what I know. I've never played it. I've only watched it being played, but it looked like a lot of fun. I honestly might even check this one out depending on the price, because I have fond memories of it in the past. So, and I have an M1 Pro, which should run decently. So, yeah, we'll see. The price also. Oh, there's also I don't know why they don't just call it a demo. They call it a free trial, in which you can play for an unspecified amount of time, and then given the option to buy the whole game. So I guess demos are downloaded separately from the main game. That's why they don't call it a demo, but it's a demo. But it's a smarter way to do the demo, because it's actually the whole game. It's almost like it's like the old shareware where you have the whole game, but you only use it for so long, and then you're locked unless you buy it. It's kind of funny. The thing of that in the modern era, but yeah, so I think that's cool, because right now you go and it just says get on the App Store, and the price, and
you're just like, what? I can get Resident Evil 2 for free.
Yeah. But then it pops up and it's like, this is a pre-order. It's like, well, but it's a pre-order for $0. It's all mildly clunky, I'm not gonna lie, but the price is unknown, but the other games prices have ranged between $20 to like I think $60, depending on the game. So I'm not sure. I guess if I were to check right now.
But for the pricing, it would be listed under in-app purchases rather than under the regular thing because of the whole trial thing. So you just download the game and then it becomes an in-app purchase to unlock the full thing.
Right. Correct. It does say it contains in-app purchases. On Steam, it's a $40 game currently, with an overwhelmingly positive rating from like a bazillion people. So that bodes well. So I mean, sometimes Apple or whatever, the games are published on Mac and they are cheaper by $10 or something. In some random cases from Feral or Aspire, the games are like $20 cheaper when they showed up. I think of the old Tomb Raider games or Civ or something. When it came to the Mac App Store, it was like a huge price drop. But in any case, nothing too crazy. $30, $40 is pretty solid for technically what's a AAA game these days. Yeah. I mean, it's funny. I don't really play the Resident Evil games, but I'm actually a big fan. I've followed the lore and the stories and some of the movies, even though they're ridiculous. But I like the world of Resident Evil, even though I played RE5 on boot camp like forever ago, which wasn't particularly great, but it was fun enough. One set in Africa. Anyway, I think the remakes, apparently they've been doing really good, and RE2 is like one of the better ones. So yeah, that's, again, nice bit of news.
Neat.
Remains to be seen if your saves can actually be saved across all devices, because different info there.
Yeah, I think there was something about with Resident Evil Village, while it came to both iOS and macOS, they existed as two separate store entries. So one on the Mac App Store and one on the iOS App Store. But Resident Evil 4 was the same entry. So if you bought it on one, you also got it on the other. So they've been inconsistent about what it is they're doing in the past with the Resident Evil games on the App Stores as well. So who knows?
Right.
But yeah, we'll find out when release rolls around, I guess, which is soon anyway. So
yeah, really soon.
But yeah, then during the MacBook Pro announcement, they also showed this card with a bunch of Mac games. A lot of them we already knew about. A few there I didn't recognize. Maybe I just have bad memory, but yeah, there was like something called Songs of Conquest. Never heard of it before.
It's I think it's a new MMO. I didn't even notice that was there. Oh no, sorry, no. Songs of Conquest is no, I'm thinking there's a different game called Songs of something. It's a sort of a spiritual successor in a sense, or heavily inspired by Heroes of Might and Magic. That style of game, like run around on a map, build a kingdom, but then go into like this funny hex gritty based combat with two armies on the side and you move around. And the bigger difference in this one and Heroes of Might and Magic, at least depending on the game, like Heroes of Might and Magic 3, the classic, like well-known one, the armies just stood by side and like ran at each other in lines. So this one you can actually like move around on a map and there's elevation and this one's also pixel graphics, but like really, really nice ones. Yeah, I've had my eye on this game for a while. It was an early access. I think it only came out of it this year. But yeah, it's rated positive, very positively on Steam. So I've almost bought it several times. It's been in my cart. In fact, it's on sale right now for $14. It's had I think it's had a Mac version all along, or at least most of the time on Steam. But maybe this is more of I don't know if they're also releasing like on the App Store or.
I mean, it might also just be Apple promoting the fact that it has these games.
Right.
But yeah.
The release date is May 20th, 2024. So it was this year.
But yeah, it was something Apple showed off, along with a bunch of the games we already knew about: Assassin's Creed Shadow, Prince of Persia: Lost Crown, RoboCop, which we've talked about before as well.
Right.
And then I thought it was kind of funny because there's a bunch of, I would say, AAA or at least high-end AA games on this card they show. And then there's one called Infinite Nikki, which I found out is like a dress-up thing. And it just, to me, felt out of place. But it might be that it's a super, big-budget, high-end game. But it's this dress-up thing. And it felt out of place to me. But, it's fine. It's cool. More games on the Mac, more better.
It is. So yeah, PlayStation. I'm looking it up now. I don't think I've heard of this.
It's apparently part of like a larger franchise of Nikki things. I think they're all called something Nikki.
I see.
I don't know that much about it, but dress up as part of it at least. Yeah, it just caught me as something funny.
It's a little funny, yeah. So, cute anime girl stuff or whatever is, pretty popular across the world, for better or for worse. So
it is.
I think most of the time it's for the better. Occasionally, and there's sort of some weird instances where it's for the worse, but that's okay. Got to take the good with the bad.
Yeah, that Farming Simulator was listed.
Like 19 or something.
No, I think it was a more recent one, but I'm not sure if it's the very latest.
Sorry, they're up to 25. My mistake.
Right. So yeah, but it really shows that Apple is being serious about this push, if nothing else. Right, 3 days event in a row, 3 mentions of games on the Mac. Specific games showed a Cyberpunk announcement at their biggest event of them all. Of these 3, the MacBook Pros, I'm sure, are the ones who attract the most people watching.
Right.
And this card with all these games, even though there wasn't that much new stuff on them, it still, shows dedication to the bit.
It does, yeah.
And happy to see that all around.
For sure. And worth noting, AC Shadows was delayed till mid-February, or no, Valentine's Day for some reason. Otherwise it was coming out, I think. It should have already been out or something. It was like November 5th or 6th, I think, originally release date. So we mentioned it last time, but just in case, like, people are like, wasn't it supposed to be out? Well, no, it got delayed till February. So, yeah, coming soon. But I agree with you 100% what you said. They're, sticking to their guns on the gaming stuff at the moment, and looking good for 2025 with some hype stuff coming, whether it's AC Shadows, Cyberpunk, or more Resident Evil now, where there's more indie stuff. Juicy goodness. And the real test to me, especially for these 2 big name games, AC Shadows and Cyberpunk, how well will they run on Mac? Very curious. I know they'll do well on low to medium, but I'm curious on the higher end. And then on what scale, like how well optimized are they? Overall, the Mac ports have been quite good lately, as far as I know. I haven't played them all, but I haven't read any. I mean, I've played a lot of them on PC, but on Mac, I haven't seen like reviews saying, "Oh my God, the performance is terrible" or something. So they seem to be doing a very consistent job. Whether it's Apple helping people or people porting it on their own or whatever, seems to have been pretty good. So very curious about Cyberpunk.
A lot better and more consistent than we used to have in the past, at least. Yeah.
That's why I bring it up, because it's been janky in the past. Feral, with rare exception, has been quite consistent. Aspire was a little hit and miss. Other people were very hit and miss. So you never know what you would get. At the end of the day, beggars can't be choosers. I feel like we're approaching, compared to PC or console, no. But like, as far as Mac goes, we're like getting close to a point of where the library, like, calling us beggars is maybe a little harsh. Now, if you a raw comparison of game numbers to other gaming platforms, well, yes. But the Mac gaming library is getting pretty substantial, especially I feel like by the end of 2025, it'll be like, it's already with the what's coming and future announcements and whatever, it's like pretty dang good. Yeah. I say that about like known games. If you go on Steam, there's like 10 million random, you don't know what games that have, that's an exaggeration, but there's a lot of them that have Mac entries and no one's ever heard of them. 5 people have played it. I'm not disparaging these games. It's just the truth. So what I mean by that is more like quantitatively known titles or things you would recognize or people would get excited about. That's what I mean.
A few more things from that card of games Apple showed that I wasn't entirely sure if we knew about already, but we have Dead Island 2 coming to Mac. We have something called Where Winds Meet that you knew a bit about, and something called Pools that I also didn't know about. But yeah, they all those 3 confirmed to be coming to Mac.
Nice.
Yep.
Yeah, Where Winds Meet is open world action RPG from, I think, China or NetEase, or it's based in Chinese mythology, ancient China setting. Dead Island 2, of course, we had the original Dead Island on Mac at some point, but never Riptide, if I'm recall. And of course, we had then the spin-off Studio Techland Dying Light, which did come to Mac. Dying Light 2, was that coming to Mac too?
I think so.
Yeah, I believe we talked about it before. I played that, honestly, pretty great. Dead Island 2, I've almost bought a few times, didn't, but it's just goofy zombie fun, basically. Mm-hmm. And instead of being on a literal island, so being called Dead Island silly, now you're in like LA or something in Dead Island 2, so whatever. It got pretty solid reviews, so happy it's coming. Doesn't take itself seriously at all. It's like a total, like, essentially slapstick game, satirical almost. So yeah, but yeah, all good games, good numbers. Let's see. We could probably just finish up by talking a bit about Apple Intelligence briefly. Sure. Maybe some of the brief experiences we've had or whatever, and wrap it up.
Mm-hmm. So like one thing I can talk a bit about is that I've been running the betas of various operating systems and stuff for a while. I don't really personally care that much for AI stuff as a whole. So everything I say, if you super care about AI stuff out there, my perspective here, in my opinion, is coming from a perspective of someone who doesn't really care. I don't find it that useful. I don't think it's particularly good as it is. I think it's impressive, but that's different to useful.
Yeah.
And like I can see some of the writing tools perhaps being useful in some situations, but not really something I would do much of. But most recently I've gotten into the closed beta of the image playground thing. And I think it is, again, impressive, but also, and this may be a bit self-evident to say because it isn't finished, but it feels very unfinished. Both from like an app perspective, like the actual app that contains the image playground stuff feels a little unfinished and rough around the corners, all over the place. But also from a perspective of the actual output of what it generates. Like it feels like Apple put a lot of restriction in there to make sure that it would never generate anything that they wouldn't want it to generate from a branding perspective. Right. They don't want it to generate violence. They don't want it to generate nudity. They don't want to generate anything at all that doesn't fit with what an Apple product should be generating.
Right.
And it feels like their approach to making sure that doesn't happen is not by trying to restrict it to just create things that are safe, but to, restrict it way more than perhaps necessary. So like if you even mention a word that can be perceived as being a person, it will ask you to pick a person from your list of people that is in your contacts or your photos library. You can't just write like, the name of some famous person or even a superhero or anything. You have to base it off of someone you know. And once a person is in its little collection of what it's trying to generate, it will only generate portraits that are framed in basically the same way.
Right.
You can't get it to create a full body picture of someone. You can't get it to zoom out or frame them slightly differently or show anything except, a frame of their face and shoulders. There's a lot of limitations to it, but the actual output it generates, especially for how fast it is, and I'm running it on M1 series of CPU, so M1 Pro and M1 Max I've tried it on.
Right.
But it runs on the neural engine, and both of those have the same neural engine.
Right.
It runs very fast. It's not quite instant or anything, but after you've put something into the pile of things it has to consider, there's these little bubbles that you can throw in that are predefined subjects. You can write your own, and then you can pick a person or base it off of a photo you have in your photos library, not necessarily just people.
Right.
But you throw something in there, you wait like a second or two, and then an image is ready.
Nice.
And then you can start swiping between all the ones that's generated as well.
Right.
They will often be very similar to one another. They haven't put the temperature, as it's called in the field, very high. So from the same description, it's going to always generate something that is fairly close to what is generated before with the same description. There is variation, but not a lot.
Sure.
So yeah, they really seem to mainly focus on the safety more so than being able to generate a wide variety of things.
Yeah, I don't blame them for that.
It's understandable.
It just takes one person making something ridiculous or crazy, and then that goes viral or whatever. And yeah, but more freedom is nice, but the tech is in its infancy as well. That's my feeling right now. I haven't gotten the Image Playground, but I played around with it a bit on my computer. Because I went into my settings the other day and noticed there was this little like new thing, like Siri and Apple Intelligence. I'm like, huh? So I clicked on it and it says join waitlist. I clicked on it and like 2 minutes later, it's like, you've been approved. Like, oh, that was a short wait.
Yeah, it was super fast for that for me as well. But Image Playground is a separate beta you have to apply for. And that did take me 2 days to get into.
Right. So yeah, I played around a little with some of the voice controls. It is improved. Siri does more stuff, but it's more just like fun rather than useful. I agree. Technically interesting. Like the level of usability would have to reach really high, way higher than it is now.
Agreed.
To actually like, I'm going to sit down and use this every day, or just voice command my way around my computer, like for commonly. As it of now, it's like, I know all my shortcuts and key commands, and it's generally quicker. Now, the use case is more as like, for some reason you're across the room and you want to be like, hey Siri, open this browser and this tab, or play this music, or hey, go to sleep or shut down or whatever. Maybe it could, honestly, I never really used Siri before at all, so I'm not sure how much like is old versus new functionality, honestly. So it's kind of fun to just tinker, but at the moment, I'd probably use it more on a phone, although my iPhone 13 doesn't support it. But even then, I don't really use it. Like, for example, my parents regularly use Siri, my sister-in-law, my sister, like I know a bunch of people, like friends and family, who use Siri voice commands all the time now, so they would probably enjoy like improved functionality there. The writing thing, or like the Apple Mail summaries, some of it's like interesting, but as someone who types well and does write anyway, it's like, well, this doesn't really help me.
Agreed.
Maybe
that's how I feel too, yeah.
Who types slowly, or maybe isn't a good writer, not that I'm saying I'm a great writer or something, but I can see a use case for these. But if you're someone who, let's say, spends a lot of time on computers anyway, or quote unquote lives on the internet or whatever, or has some sort of job with a computer, web dev, app creation, whatever, like we have, don't currently see a use case. This is like ultra casual feeling to me.
I think for dyslexic people, the new proofreading is going to be a huge step up from the old spell check, but that's
right.
That's a bit of a niche case. Yeah, I don't know how many people are dyslexic, but I could see, or just bad spellers in general. But dyslexic, I can see proofreading being a lot better, because I did try intentionally writing something that was a bit off, where I also did it a bit too off for where the regular spell check could know, like it could underline it with the red and go like, that's not right, but I have no idea what you're saying. If I then marked it all and did the Apple Intelligence proofread thing, it did actually give me suggestions that were what I was trying to misspell. So if you're someone who benefits from spell checking more, like and not necessarily find the current spell check good enough, then the Apple Intelligence proofreading is significantly improved on spell check. With the downside that, unlike the normal spell checker, it's something you have to activate rather than just always fixing slight mistakes automatically.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, I think now it really just feels, like you said, incomplete, more or less. And a lot of features have also been delayed till next year, which Apple has been mocked for, I think rightfully, because they came out of the gate. It has all this amazing stuff, and then like, but actually it's coming next year, sort of.
Yeah, it was funny at these three Mac announcement events as well, because they kept going like, and when Apple Intelligence later comes out with this thing, it will be able to do this, and you're just sitting there like, right.
Yeah, it felt more for maybe investors or whoever rather than the active current users. But Apple doesn't usually do that, so it felt a little strange. Maybe not even a little. It felt very strange for some people, and I would agree. But AI, quote unquote AI, which is really large language models and learning, machine learning, whatever. People call it AI. It's not really AI, but that's fine.
Yep.
Also, Apple Intelligence, shorthanded, is AI, which is just weird. I
No,
feel
I
like,
kind of like that. I think it's a good move on their part to.
yeah, weird's the wrong word. I meant like funny. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, it's what I meant. I've been saying weird too much this morning. Um, yeah, but no, it's fun stuff. The Apple Intelligence stuff, I think next year should ramp up to more useful or more interesting features, or the current features that feel underdeveloped or incomplete should be more polished. And you would presume that would just keep getting better and better over time to where it becomes really robust and maybe have some actual use cases for like, or let's just say, for lack of a better term, experienced computer users like yourself or myself or others out there. So,
Yeah. Like currently, it's slated that a lot of these image playground, Genmoji, there was one other big one that I forgot. But AI features from Apple Intelligence are going to come to 18.2 and macOS 15.2, which should release in December.
oh,
But
wow, okay.
I really don't see how they can have, like, I've only really played with the image playground thing, but I really don't see how they can have that at a place where it's reasonable to push that out to the public before then. It's got like a selector for where you can select the style of image it generates, and right now you can only pick from animated or illustration.
Right,
They previously
like
promised like 5 or 6 different options or something. They've officially canceled one of them, and right now they only have 2.
Interesting.
The app crashes. I wouldn't say frequently, but it does crash. If you full screen it, which you cannot do with the normal macOS full screen shortcut,
Okay.
and you then hit escape, there's a 50-50 chance whether it'll crash or exit full screen.
Yeah.
It, like, the menu bar is arranged weirdly in my opinion, like the actual menus in the menu bar.
Right.
I don't know, there's just a lot of little things that feel like, right, so someone was tasked with creating an app wrapper around this model in like a week.
Right.
And focus most of it on making it look pretty, because it does look great and it's fun, and the little bubbles that fly around are great, and
Right.
like I like the joy factor of it. It feels delightful in its interface, but it feels so rough around the edges that I really can't imagine how they're gonna have it ready by December. Like it,
arguably rushing it out before the holidays, where people tend to go on breaks and this and that, doesn't really seem well. Depending on your point of view, you get it out because people probably have more free time and they play around with it and maybe word gets around. But then if it's like, I think I looked on I think it's on the App Store, as far as I could tell, Image Playground has like a rating of 2 or something from quite a few, 2 out of 5.
I mean,
Maybe
the beta
it's
was just built into macOS. You didn't need to get it from anywhere.
Maybe it was something else, but I swear, Image Playground, Apple, create fun images easily. Okay, 509 ratings, 2.7 out of 5. So
I mean, it might be because it's possible to delete it and then you can reinstall it from in there, but it is just built into macOS in the latest betas.
Yeah, that was just App Store preview. But it's I mean, more the merrier. Maybe Apple's just taking a different approach with some of its AI. Clearly they are taking a different approach with their AI rollout. Or, so, the pattern has changed once again. First the M4s and now the AI. Whatever next. But that's about it for the show today. We've got a lot of fun stuff for the end of the year and coming into the next year. It's going to be great. So, yeah, it feels really good to be a Mac user and increasingly good to be a Mac gamer as the 2020s roll onward.
And Ted has gotten a Mac Mini with M4, so we can get his thoughts on on that for some time.
My brother might get a Mac Mini, honestly. I was just talking to him because he's got to upgrade an old iMac. He has a really old Intel he uses for like basic office stuff. And by old, I mean like a 2013 21-inch. I think it's horrendous, but nowadays it's 11 years old. What do you expect? And I was like, those new Mac Minis are really nice, and I was showing him how big they were. I had this little box randomly, like about this size. He's like, because he likes neatness and lack of clutter and like space. So I'm like, well, this is pretty attractive. Just get a monitor, plug it in. He's like, So yeah. He plays games occasionally, usually through crossover, like just mess around with Fallout 4 and stuff. But Yeah, so he might get one. Yeah, I will be very tempted to get an M4 Pro laptop, even though I don't have a reason to. We'll see. So I might end up with one as well. Like not this year, but sometime in 2025. So for now, I'll rock my M1 Pro and see how some stuff runs on that. Okay, but yeah, we'll wrap up the show here. So thanks for listening, everyone. Thanks, Casper, for being here and relaying all the great technical details. And so we'll try to have another show before the end of the year, depending on scheduling. But yeah. I was going to say stay warm, but it's not cold where necessarily everywhere. It's just cold where I am, and I think you are. So,
oh yes.
Anyway, staying warm is a good thing. So stay warm, everyone, and thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.
Yeah. Cheers, all.